Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McKusick. It's time for this week's matchups episode. We're going to talk about the defense first, and joining me is my friend Frazer Tafar. Frazer, how you doing?
Doing good, Ken. Glad to be back on for the defensive show. Going on a little bit of a losing streak. Cincinnati, Pittsburgh. Let's see if we can break it going against Cincinnati this week.
Yeah, both very bad games. Obviously, multiple turnovers against Cincinnati. Hopefully that they can fix that. But all the opportunities created by the defense and the red zone failures this last week, and the officiating as well. But honestly, their own red zone failures as much or more. Just a miserable couple of weeks of football here.
Yeah, it's been tough. Moving
Uh,
into my Go ahead. Moving into my first matchup for this week, I have the Ravens run defense versus the Bengals run offense. Really, that's where the game starts. If we can stop them there without Higgins, it could be an issue for them to get going on offense. I know they have Chase, who's arguably one of the best receivers in the NFL, and they have a decent supporting cast, whether it be Yoshavash or some of the other tight ends that they have. Um, if we can take Chase Brown out of the game in terms of running the ball and force him to be a pass first option, then it could bode well in terms of pressuring Burrow, knowing that we have obvious passing situations, and then also coming up and making the hits on the short throws, preventing them from really getting any yak, and then forcing Burrow to throw it to the second and third levels.
I'm with you on that. In fact, my next one's going to sound somewhat similar, but I agree that the defense against the run is going to be a big deal. It's interesting. Chase Brown doesn't get a lot of ink, and he's only averaged 4.2 yards per carry, so he hasn't been a great runner or anything. But he's got 31 missed tackles forced and a missed tackle force rate of 0.18 per carry. And I'm just looking at Henry right now. He's got 26 missed tackles forced in 222 attempts, which is better than it was last week, but it's still under 12% for the year. Now, by the way, it was 0.09, but the 0.12 would still be the lowest rate of his entire career. So anyway, that's obviously in terms of dealing with Chase Brown. I think they could go to the same strategy they did last week, which would be using 4 nose tackles again. And I think that the chance of them doing that probably went up with the fact that Higgins is out. I think they're going to put less of a premium on having that last player decision between perhaps Josh Tupou and Aeneas Peebles be made in favor of a 3-tech. I think they might go with another nose tech again. And the other thing is that with the weather, I mean, this week, I
Yeah.
mean, I would just imagine this is going to be a game where you're going to want to be able to stop the run. We did see Burrow just go up to Buffalo and throw all over the Bills, but I think that's certainly a possibility. So you can't take anybody's run assets for granted when they run okay out of 11 personnel, and that's about what the Bengals do. So I'm with you on that one. I'll go a little bit different on mine, not much. It's the Ravens 4 and 5 man front versus the Bengals offensive line. They need to get actual penetration. They could get a lack of movement will allow good flowing for the football by the inside linebackers. By the way, that's exactly what happened against Pittsburgh. They shut down Pittsburgh's run game with this 4 nose tackle alignment. It's not 4 nose tackles all at once. It's 2 nose tackles basically on every play is what you get every potential running down. And they were very effective using that. And they used 2 nose tackles and Urban on some plays in an uncovered look and in a base look both. And they were very effective with that as well. So I think they might be incented to try that again, despite the fact that a lot of what Burrow does is that short passing game. And I'm sure we're going to talk about that in some of our later things. But you want to force Burrow to have to throw in potentially difficult conditions. And it's going to be about 12 degrees at game time with winds about 10 miles per hour. I do expect that to affect Lamar Jackson.
Yes.
But they need to make it affect Joe Burrow as well.
Yeah, and he's shown to have less than desirable arm talent in terms of
Yes.
taking the ball and who's shooting it where he wants to. He's more of a timing quarterback, so it's going to be crucial to get him off his spot, really forcing the receivers to get off their route, and then mess up the timing so he's not 1-2-3, 1-2-5, all the way back to the 7-step drop, and then getting to the top of his drop and making the throw. need him to pull it down. Really starts with the coverage in terms of being sticky, but that pressure up front is definitely going to be big. But we can't get to that point unless we stop the run, especially in these cold conditions.
Yeah. Would you go with the four nose tackles, or would you go with Aeneas Peebles this week and try and get a little more pressure on him?
Probably the four nose tackles. Peoples has been inactive for what, 8 weeks now, nine
Yeah.
weeks in a row.
He
So it's
was
been
he was active one time in there, but yeah.
yeah. So it's been a little bit disappointing. I know he's not there in terms of where we want his body to be. I think he's probably gonna have to take the Justin Matabike route. Matabike was a contributor his first season, but I think he needs to put on more weight and have more sand in his pants to really be someone we can count on down in and down out.
Yeah, we've seen the guys who are you understand the runway concept pretty quickly when you just look at percentage of snaps played in the first season. Like Tavius Robinson played 30% of the outside linebacker snaps in his first season. David Ajabo has, I don't think he's ever played that. If he has, he's barely made it in his third or fourth year. The guys who start at 30% or 40% on defensive linemen, they're going to have really good careers that'll be, they'll be used in a broad variety of ways. It does occasionally happen in trial by fire purposes, but it's typically a very good sign. Just snaps played, aggregate snaps played as a rookie for an outside linebacker or defensive lineman.
All right, moving on to do you have moving on to my next point. I have the Ravens linebackers, safeties versus the Bengals tight ends. If it's not Chase, they run it through either Tanner Hudson or Gesicki. Noah Fant has been on the back end of that rotation, but those two help move the chains. He likes Hudson a lot because he's a bigger target, 6'5", 240. So really gonna focus on Buchanan getting the right drops. I don't anticipate a lot of man coverage with the tight ends unless it's Hamilton lining up against them. Um, I do want to see eye discipline from the linebackers. We didn't get, I feel like, torched between the second and the third level. A lot of the plays that happened last week with DK Metcalf were third level throws near the safeties and behind the corners. So I think we're making the middle difficult to pick apart. And I want to see that continue against a formidable tight end duo.
So they may activate four tight ends in this game. They do make extensive use of the tight end. Drew Sample is really their blocking tight end primarily. Noah Fant is out there. Noah Fant has caught 33 out of 37 balls this year, but hasn't had a big yards per target number. He's down. Well, he's 37 for 283. I'm not calculating it right now, but I'm looking at it. Gesicki similarly has not been all that effective. Tanner Hudson's been a little bit more effective, but it's only 15 targets for him. So I do feel like this is a game where the Ravens should have the ability to cover that. I think some of that's going to have to be Hamilton, but some of it could also be Roquan and Buchanan. Want to see more out of Buchanan in coverage, big time. I want to see more out of Buchanan in coverage. He's about the only thing I can say about Buchanan right now. I don't think he's played particularly well this year unless you qualify with for a rookie. Okay, if
Right.
you once you put in the for a rookie, then you can say, "Oh yeah, okay, Patrick Queen sucked as a rookie," and he did. Yeah, he did. I mean, Patrick Queen really sucked for 2 years as a first round player, and once you've been through that, you really understand just how important it is to have a player like Buchanan who comes in is below average, but still a contributor
Serviceable.
as a
Right.
rookie. Yeah. So, and I'm with you on the safeties and tight ends. Mine was similar in terms of what they do with the safeties versus Burrow. I like to see the eye discipline there. I want to see safeties that read the quarterback. I want to see that rob routes because I think most of what you do against a player like Chase is not particularly defensible. You have to get help defending it by getting close to the quarterback and potentially getting your hands up. That's one possibility. Possibility number two is the weather helps you out on some missed passes to the outside. And I agree with you. Burrow's arm strength should be a detriment there. But possibility number three is you have to be willing to play some zone where you aggressively go underneath, relying on over the top help. I think it's extremely dangerous for a player like Chase and a quarterback like Burrow. So it ends up being, Chase is just a weapon who's going to get his catches. They're going to need to try and do a better job of really being sticky with him in man coverage situations. By the way, man coverage situations usually a pretty small percentage of total passing situations. You play man on third down typically to defend the sticks. That's the most common time where you play it, and that's when they need you best, because that's when Chase has really hurt us, particularly in the last matchup. So I'm for that, and otherwise, I think they really need to clamp down on what Chase can do over the top versus them, and depend on the weather to constrain that throwing game. We did just see Burrow have a big game in some snowy conditions. I don't know how windy it was in Buffalo. Usually it's pretty windy no matter what, but I don't know how windy it was for that game. And I do expect the Ravens to drop primarily out of a four-man, use a four-man rush, even if they show some simulated pressure, and drop 7 to handle the short game in particular. So they want to have 5 under 2 over kind of thing, or 4 and 3 to if they want to use some cover 3 in this game, to get bodies into the secondary, get bodies into the passing lanes, and impact Burrow. Good
Yeah,
half field play. Yep.
Yeah, completely agree. I think it's going to be easier this week without Higgins because he's still in that concussion protocol. So being able to essentially key in on Chase, which again, I mentioned this in the episodes previous. The Ravens, when they key in on a number one wide receiver, except Metcalf last week, they're able to have a really good plan in terms of keeping the lid on top of him. So I anticipate a really good plan coming into this week against Chase, who's embarrassed us in the past. And I think Orr is going to make an emphasis to not let him destroy the game. Go ahead.
Yeah, they've done a good job with that in the past, particularly against Burrow. And I'd like to see them. I'd like to see what their choice is in terms of having Wiggins travel
Right.
with Chase, or have him stay on the side. They could just have him stay on the side and let it be. He's covering a number 2 receiver, and they rotate a safety asset, or they do what they need to get over on Chase to put the lid on him. But I don't think they can just hope things work out with a kind of a standard alignment against Chase. I think you have to do specific things to attack what he's trying to do.
Yeah, I think that would staying sound in our alignment would make sense if Higgins was still on the field, but because it's just Chase, I think having Wiggins travel with him is the main option at this
Okay.
point because we don't want Chase going against Humphrey because that doesn't sound good. And even though Uzier has been playing well, I don't want Chase going up against him and selling him something at the top of the route. And now he's just broken off and there's all this space out in front of Chase and Burrow just lays it up. So I think it's having someone with that recovery speed. If Chase does make his move like he usually does, they easily can get into his back pocket.
All right. All right. Always great doing the show with you, Frazier. Tell folks where they can talk football with you online.
You guys can reach me at Twitter/X at F_Rave8. That's F_RAVE8.
All right. Thanks so much for listening, folks. As always, use hashtag Filmstudy Mailbag if you can. I'm trying to use that as a source for these short videos. You know that by now. If you want to be a film study short, there will be opportunities the rest of the season and also after the season. If you'd like to talk to me about something, probably those are the best time for franchise building shows that get into how do they restructure, how do they rebuild a pass rush. Garnett West, I want to apologize to him. He had a great question about rebuilding basically the entire roster that they want to submit to Friday Morning GM, and it's several episodes is what that is. So we'll try and attack pieces of that as we go. But looking for topics specifically that I can cover in 1 to 3 minutes, or that we could cover together in about 20 minutes. For Fraser Tapar, this is Ken McKusick saying goodbye. We'll talk to you next time on Matchups.